Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Inhumans, Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2. So, I would honestly say that Inhumans honestly just feels like this was a show where, like, the people who decided to go on and do this didn't have the money to do Inhumans. Like, there was just no money for this kind of show, and then for it to eventually get quickly canceled wasn't exactly a surprise. We go on and we just have a plethora of characters used in the Inhumans that really were just like you really had to have characters that really couldn't use their powers all that much, or like what they kind of use these characters for. I was like, man, this is just a less than kind of like approach to this whole thing. And so hence why it got canceled after 8 episodes. Nobody was really watching. Like, it wasn't the fact that like Inhumans wasn't it wasn't the fact that Inhumans wasn't popular. It was just the fact that a lot of people were just like, dude, like, there's no way that this show is going to go on and do this justice. Like, there is no way that they're going to go on and do this right. So, like, a lot of people are just like, psh, like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to watch this kind of show. And so they really had to rest a lot on dialogue and just try to stretch every episode to where it just feels like in 2 episodes they didn't really do anything. They haven't really done anything. And so it was just kind of very disappointing. So I would say Inhumans does have a motion comic series, and I would probably much rather like recommend that than this show. Or really, at some point, hopefully, somewhere down the line, we can go and have some Inhumans being put into a show or possibly a movie at some point. That would be great, right? So, going on into this, we of course teeing it up. We have Maximus, who is to be Black Bolt's brother. And Maximus, it was to go through the Terrigen Mist, or the Terrigen way of doing things, to supposedly get his inhuman power. And come to find out, we of course had Maximus, who didn't get a power, so he was to now go on, and instead of going into the caves like any normal person without like a legitimate power would have to go on and just go to the mines. We have Maximus who's like, well, like, since my brother is Black Bolt, like, guess what? I'm not going to go on and go to the mines, so sucks to be you. So we have Maximus, who is to more and more decide that he wants somehow or another to persuade anybody to be on his side of wanting to just go to war on Earth, because really he doesn't understand why they're still on the moon and like resources are to be like as bad as they are. And we just have Maximus who just wants them to retake the Earth or figure out a way to just make them want to go into war. And it just seems that like these characters are defiant throughout these episodes. So with that said, I think it's just about that time to go into spoilers about this one. Let me know in the comments below how, if you went in and watched the Inhuman show, or maybe after going on and watching some certain MCU stuff here, maybe you went on and was more interested in the Inhumans than you were before. So I think it's about that time to just double fire this bad boy up. I think it's time to just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time you to spoil these 2 episodes. So in the beginning of this episode, we have, of course, our characters on um, Oahu or Oahu, Hawaii. So we have this new mutant or this new Inhuman. I want to say mutant because it's almost the same thing. We have this new Inhuman that is to have these yellow eyes and somehow had gotten to eventually be Terrigen Mist. So we have Triton who is to go on and find this girl and say, like, well, hey, like, I'm one of the Inhumans just like you, and I'm gonna help you go on and go to the moon, the Atlan, and like I'm gonna help you be saved and be around people that are just like you. So let me help you. All of a sudden, we have these mercenaries that come in and try to kill Triton and kill this Inhuman. So Triton is running off, desperately hoping that he'll get away from these guys, and we have to assume that he was to be killed off, but there is no real guarantee here. So we now have a number of the Inhumans that are all getting up for their day. We have Medusa and Black Bolt who are sharing a bed together, and Black Bolt, of course, is getting like Paige to get up, and Medusa is using her hair to try to restrain Black Bolt. And so Medusa is asking Black Bolt, like, you ever remember a time that we weren't king and queen? And Black Bolt is just looking at her and he's like, yeah, me neither. So they get up, and so now we transition to Crystal, who is to be this kind of young Inhuman. And so Crystal is to go on with Lockjaw, and Lockjaw is his teleporting dog. And so Crystal is to go on and to make it to the ceremony where they are to, of course, make certain potential next Inhumans. So we go on and have these two characters going through the Terrigen Mist, and it seems that one girl is to immediately get these butterflies, and another kid like was to possibly not quite get his power yet. And so Maximus is going on and telling this kid, it's like, well, this kid called Bronyor, that, hey man, like powers like develop late. And so all of a sudden the kid is to be touched by Maximus, and all of a sudden the kid is to realize that Maximus at some point is going to have snakes be surrounded by him, and that they're gonna like smack him into this wall. Maximus is like, I don't get what you mean by that, but okay, that sounds weird. So we go on, and Maximus is just to kind of think nothing of it. And Maximus goes on and is to take these two to show off their power. And we of course have one of the like outspoken Inhumans that is to ask, like, well, hey, like, what is this one kid's power? And we of course have it where Maximus is like, well, we're not really sure exactly what this is yet, and so like hopefully we can figure it out eventually. And the guy in the mines, who is this outspoken guy, is like, well, hey, like he's gonna go in the mines then, because if he doesn't have a good enough power, like he's gonna be put in the mines, like you should have been. And Maximus is like, well, like my brother's Black Bolt, so no, like I'm royalty, so sorry. So we go on, and so now we have a bunch of the Inhumans together going on and eating, and Maximus is still trying to push with all the Inhumans about like, well, hey, like how about we go on and like just like we're running out of resources here. How about we just go on and take back Earth? Like it makes all the sense in the world because we have Gorgon, who was to go on and crush this this rover, like a robot driving on the moon, and so all of a sudden the people that are to be at the uh, Callisto Aerospace Command Center are seeing a video where this camera is being crushed by this hoof, this hoof, and so they're like, "What the is that?" And so they're like, "Yeah, like that just seems very unusual." But it seems that at some point, Luis is to come up with like, "Well, it must be some kind of weird hoof." It's like, okay, but what does that really mean? But it seems that more and more that these people wildly or weirdly just start to believe that this girl's story is really true. And they're like, okay, like, I don't know how this could be true, but it just seems very reasonable, weirdly, for some odd reason. So we have it where Maximus is saying, like, well, hey, it seems like they're going to take the fight to us before we can take the fight to them. So we should do something. And so we of course have Black Bolt that is just trying to tell everybody like, well, hey, like trust in him and like don't go on and think that they're going to go into war anytime soon. That just feels like a goofy thing to try to do right now. So all of a sudden, since Maximus is to not get his way, then he is to turn around and show this video of mercenaries killing Triton to try to say like, yeah, now you're going to get into war, right? So we go on, and so Black Bolt is to say it's like, well, hey, like Triton going on Earth to try to convince all these humans to come with him, like that was to try to prevent a number of our people going on and being imprisoned on Earth, and so like I think that we should just kind of continue doing what we're doing. And again, like we shouldn't go to war. It's like you should just trust your king. And Maximus at this point is like, really? Like, come on. So Black Bolt needs time to assess what's going on here. And so Black Bolt needs time in this kind of chamber. And so Medusa is to have this memory of the first time she met Black Bolt and was to convince him that she wasn't afraid of him and no one else should be, and that they'll kind of figure out a way to help Black Bolt just kind of transition. So so Maximus is to ask Medusa, it's like, well, hey, like I bet you feel like bad that you ever went into that room to talk to him. Medusa's like, well, no, not really. And so Maximus is going and consistently trying to hit on Medusa, trying to say it's like, well, hey, like if you were my queen, I would never treat you like the way that he does. I wouldn't have you do so much stuff that he makes you do, and so on and so forth. And like Maximus keeps touching her shoulder, and more Medusa is just like, like this is wrong. So Medusa gets so upset with Maximus to the point of Medusa taking her hair, pushing Maximus against this wall, and Maximus is like, "Oh my god, technically that kid was right about like the snakes being Medusa's hair and me getting smacked into a wall." So Now Maximus is to take Bronyar and is to give him to a guy named Kitkin. And so Maximus is to have this conversation with Kitkin and hopefully see that, like, hey, this guy, like this kid is to possibly be like a fortune teller, and that Maximus is also trying to talk to Kitkin about, like, but what about that war? Like, maybe I can, like, kind of partner up with you. And like Kitkin is just not persuaded at all, because Kitkin is to mention, it's like, well, wait a minute, like this kid was to mention to me as he touched me that like I was to go on and lie into a beautiful river, and like we don't have rivers here, so whatever he's saying doesn't make sense. So Maximus is to immediately know where this is going, and so he ends up taking a girl who is Anran, and is to have her kill Kitkin. And Maximus is like, well, no, I know what that meant exactly, a river of blood. So we have Maximus taking Aran and wanting to just eventually have her want to take down all the Inhumans. And Maximus is trying to persuade a number of these guards, these royal guards, to go against all these Inhumans. And so we now start to have, slowly but surely, we have guys like Karnak that are getting attacked by these guards, as Karnak is talking to Gorgon, because Gorgon is to go off on Earth to try and find Triton, and Triton ends up getting attacked. So Gorgon is to talk to Karnak and saying, like, hey, like, I'm getting attacked on Earth, and like Karnak all of a sudden is to have a number of guards come in there and want to wipe him out, and so he's like, oh my god, like, we need to inform all the other Inhumans that this is going on. So Gorgon is already on Earth, so it seems like he's fine. And so Karnak goes and gets and tries to get Crystal, and Crystal is listening to music, so she didn't really hear like her thing go off, her communicator. And so Karnak goes and meets up with Crystal, and Crystal just teleports Karnak onto Earth. And at some point, we just have Crystal, who is just stuck on Atland, and she's just be imprisoned. And like Maximus is kind of teasing at some point that like Lockjaw, like, hey, you never know, like Lockjaw could get like a like in a string of violent acts within Atland. It seems that aggression is really going on in this planet now, like their king is gone. Because we go on and we have it where like Lockjaw is to be sent to take Medusa and Black Bolt and send them both to Earth and just kind of drop them there. And so we go on into this episode now, like all the Inhumans are all separated. They're all not all at the same place. And like that's how a bulk of this episode is to go off. But like the way the episode ends is before Black Bolt gets taken to Earth, we have Maximus that is talking to Black Bolt and just be like, well, hey, like Maximus is just reminding Black Bolt of him killing their parents, and how at some point young Black Bolt was talking to his parents, and he just said the word "why," and he killed both of them. And so Black Bolt was to be in this room talking to his brother, and then he ends up getting teleported on Earth, and that's how the first episode just kind of ends. So hopefully, for the most of the point, I like covered most of the stuff that happens in this episode, for the first one. So yeah, so within the second episode, kind of feel like the second episode is technically kind of like all over the place, but it is what it is. So we have in the second episode, we of course have it where I'm trying to figure out the best way to break this down. Let me pause here for 1 second. All right. For the second episode, we go on and we have like certain characters that are to have now been dumped off on Earth. And so we have it where like certain people are trying to get into contact. We have like Medusa, who is to go on and speak with Black Bolt, who Black Bolt is to go on and almost cause this accident because he's just kind of like just pops out of nowhere, to the point where all of a sudden the Callisto Astrospace people are to say like, well, hey, wait a minute, like it seems like this guy was to appear out of nowhere, and so like people have like been calling in about this weird case. So Black Bolt is to go on and hide out uh, at like the back of this kind of area of this part of the city, hoping that he won't get spotted. So Medusa is trying to call Black Bolt and is to try to figure out like, well, hey, like where could Black Bolt be, and so on. So Black Bolt is talking to Medusa. Medusa's like, well, hey, give me some sign that you're still alive. And Black Bolt is to press like his thing to his heart, and Medusa can hear his heart, and she's like, oh, okay. So Black Bolt goes on and is to kind of have this kind of signal thing, hopefully picking up certain sounds. And Medusa is like, oh, it sounds like you're like in the city. And so Medusa is to decide to go on this tour bus and to go on this tour and to hopefully have this tour make it back to the city. So we have it where Crystal was to go on and be like imprisoned in this room. And so Maximus was to take Crystal out of this room and say it's like, well, hey, like you can go on and do a number of things. You can go on and have me imprison you, or like imprison you in your room for your rest of your life, or you can go on and join me and like do like help me with my cause. And Crystal's like, well, I'm never going to help you. And so I was like, well, there's your answer right there. So Crystal is to go on and be sent to her room, and so at some point she's going to go on and have a communicating like conversation with her mother through this device. And while they're talking, we of course have Medusa, who realizes like, oh my god, they're going to try to trace us on this call. And so like I'm going to have to go on and break this communicator so they won't figure out where I am. So we have the Callisto Aerospace Command Center people who are to realize that it seems that there were 4 sets of energy things coming from the moon to Earth. And like we also have Luis's like commander kind of boss who's like, well, yeah, like you were talking about that hoof story before, like I think I'm going to start to believe you because like there's so many energy patterns and they're trying to figure out like what had happened. And so we have it where Luis is just thinking that it's like, well, like I think there were 4 people that are now on Earth that weren't like there before, so like something's going on here. There's an energy pattern that's just kind of telling us this. So, and of course, all these energy patterns was just Lockjaw like teleporting all these people to Earth, and they somehow picked that up somehow. So we have Gorgon who is on Earth, and he is to just try to desperately figure out where Triton is. And so Gorgon is to weirdly take off his boots to show his hooves. And Gorgon is decided to just go into the water and seemingly drown himself stupidly. We have a number of surfers that are to grab him out of the water and are to retrieve him. I'm like, okay, this guy just seemed dumb. And so they go on and they're talking to this guy, and it's like, oh, you must be one of those Inhumans. And he's like, well, yeah, like I am one of those Inhumans. And like, what gave him away? The hooves on his legs? You would have thought that would have been a dead giveaway. And so we're going on, and these guys are kind of mentioning it's like, well, I think we've like met a couple of these characters a couple times before, and he's like, oh, okay, well, so we have Gorgon who eventually at some point is wanting to figure out how he can go on and like figure out how to dwindle down the army of Maximus. And so the surfer guys are just saying it's like, well, hey, like, why don't you just like bring the fight to here? And so Gorgon is to try to like egg on by keeping his communicator open to have them send all these guys that they can send to have Gorgon kind of take them down. And I know it's not the perfect flow of this episode, but this episode's going to be all over the place, anyways. So Maximus is going on and having a lot of speeches throughout this episode, trying to convince his people. And so we have at points where Maximus is buttering certain people up, where like some of the like the miners and stuff like that, he is telling them it's like, well, hey, like for those of you who are to go on and do like the most labor here, like you guys, I guess would be the most smartest and strongest characters that we have, and all of them start to laugh like, yeah, we're really smart because we're just forced to do this labor here. So Maximus is just trying to convince them to like work with him, and like he's just consistently trying to manipulate people and tell them what's going on. So we have Black Bolt that goes on to make it to this tailor store, and he goes in there to try to change his outfit, and this woman's like, oh, well, I think I can get something nice for you. And so she gives him this kind of like suit, and he's like, well, this will be fitting. And so he just walks out of the store, and they're like, wait a minute, so you have to pay for that. And so he just walks away from the store, and police are trying to track him down and try to stop him. And like Black Bolt is just kind of running away from them. And I'm like, don't tell me he's gonna go on and like outrun these police officers and not be able to use his power. So at some point, the police do surround him and start to beat on him. And we even have at one point where some cop was trying to stop Black Bolt and he like cuffs them. And so they can't take him down via just clubbing him. And man, these police officers are like the worst kind of police officers. They're really beating on this guy and kicking him, and none of this stuff actually makes sense for a police officer to do. Like, that's how bad this episode is. To where it's just like, I'm sorry, this is like police brutality that you're showing on this episode. And like, none of this just seems like a real like thing upon the show. So we have Black Bolt, who then gets tasered, and when Black Bolt gets tasered, he ends up just kind of having a little kind of thing like come out of his mouth, and so all of a sudden this little like flips this car, and no one gets hurt, nothing really happens, and so it's like, okay, so Black Bolt gets arrested and he goes into jail, and he is to go on and uncuff himself, and but he's willing to, like, he's trying to do sign language, and he's trying to say that he's like willing to do whatever these guys want. Like, what do you guys want me to do? And they're like, well, hey, like, go over there, get your picture taken, and we'll book you. And he's just like, okay. So he goes right over to where he's going to get like his picture taken. He's like, hey, like, arrest me, like, come on. So Black Bolt is to go on and try to talk to Medusa one last time after, or once Medusa has to go on and is to fight uh, Aaron, because Aaron is to go and find this one character that's to be this like wall, or this like face on this wall that is to open this doorway for Auron to go through. And he's like, well, hey, I don't want to teleport you to Earth, like, that's painful. And Aura's like, well, hey, if you don't go on and do this for me, like, I'm gonna tell these guys that you like made this horrible for me. So Aura goes on and is to make it to where Medusa is, and is to follow this bus. And so Medusa is to find out that Auron is on this bus, and so they start fighting it out. And it seems that Medusa was able to find a knife off of one of her passengers on this bus. And so Medusa fights with Auron, and so at one point Auron is to kind of toss Medusa through this window, and Auron is telling Medusa, it's like, well, I guess you're not all that good without your hair, aren't you? And so Medusa goes on and stabs into Auron multiple times, and then is to take her communicator to have one last talk with Black Bolt as he's going to be put into prison. And so we just kind of see prisoned Black Bolt just kind of stewing away by the end of this episode. So we have Karnak, who is to be on Earth, and he is to try to figure out with his power where exactly to head. And so he's like, okay, like north, east, west, like which, like, where should I go? Which should I choose? So he goes on and he is to do this path to possibly take him directly to where any of the other Inhumans are at some point. So with that said, I think besides like a speech from Maximus towards the end of here, we have Maximus, who was to again talk with Branya, and we have Branya mentioning that some guys in silver robes were plotting against Maximus to kill him off. And so Maximus is thinking here, it's like, well, wait a minute, like, though that actually is, of course, the council. And so he's like, huh, so like these guys are trying to like plot against me. So I don't remember what the first thing that he said is, but I know it was like a council of sorts. So Maximus goes on and is to meet with this council and is to persuade them to either align with Maximus or they're going to get killed, and just kind of think about like their lives and how precious they are. So Maximus is to like persuade the council out of fear to just go on and do whatever, is to not go up against Maximus. And so yeah, so we go on, and that I think is to be all that really happens within these first two episodes. So depending on how like this eventually may go, maybe like no one will care about it and I'll just move on and do something else. Or maybe people might be intrigued by Inhumans and I'll go on and continue to just do this series, because really, after this, there's only like possibly three more installments if I do two episodes every single time. Then, because this show only lasted 8 episodes because it ended up getting canceled. So I don't know. Like, really, it was just going on and just needing some content to do. So I figured, hey, why not? With that said, uh, I am possibly just gonna go on and get out of here. I'm just trying to genetic council. I just wanted uh, to get that, so I can get that name correctly, because I knew it was council something, but I realized, oh, genetic council, because I didn't have that as a note. So with that said, let me know in the comments below how you felt about the Inhumans. If you thought that the show sucked, I can understand that. I just wanted to just see what this was like. I like always wanted to just kind of test the waters, and maybe at some point, maybe a number of people will be intrigued by Inhumans for whatever reason. Possibly, there's also another just reason for me to just do this show. So, with that said, I'm just being honest. Like, there is a number of times where it's like, oh yeah, like there's obviously a reason for some people who are to go on and watch something. Um, but hey, like, you might as well just kind of watch like any of this superhero stuff anyways. Like, when really looking at it, you probably should just go on and just watch all of it, all the like eventual superhero stuff, because eventually at some point random stuff just becomes popular. It's very wild how eventually things will just like blow up the way it did, and like, oh wow, like I didn't know there was an audience for this, but I guess it is. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Hopefully, I've covered most of the episodes. Maybe not in dialogue, but like I tried. Um, and there really isn't much going on in these episodes. And so with that said, I'm just gonna get out of here. So bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.